so you'll hear it. There we go.
Okay. Um, Good evening. It is 7 o'clock on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, and the regularly scheduled meeting of the Larkspur Planning Commission is now in session. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here.
I have no attendees showing up.
Okay. Thank you for being here anyway.
Oh,
Um, so could we start with the roll call, please?
I'm sorry. I'm wondering if maybe I didn't start the broadcast.
Oh, okay. Let's try again.
It said you
Here we
did.
go. I thought I did, but it didn't
Oh,
go.
yeah. Now
So
they're
here we go. Now they're all coming in.
okay. There we go. All right. I'm gonna start over. Okay, it is 7 o'clock or 7:01 on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. This evening's meeting of the Larkspur Planning Commission is now in session. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. And we will start with the roll call.
Uh, Commissioner Swisser,
Here.
Commissioner Tauber, absent. Commissioner Wagstaff,
Here.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Yeah.
and Commissioner Kunstler.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. As is customary, we begin each meeting by asking the public whether they wish to comment on matters that are specifically not on the agenda. And if you have such a matter to discuss or to propose, if you could just raise your hand, and I'll wait a second to see if that happens. Okay, seeing none, we can move on to the planning director's report.
Thank you. I don't have anything to report to you tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. So then with that, I guess we can move on immediately to our first public hearing item, since there is no consent calendar. And that is design review, floor area ratio, slope use permit, and variance number 20-28 for 15 Ellswood Drive in Larkspur. And could we start with the staff report, please? Oh, and before we do, though, I do want to recognize that Laura Tauber has now joined the meeting, and will therefore be marked as present. Okay, with that, we can go ahead and receive the staff report.
All right, thank you, Chair Kinsler.
Thank you.
So the project is 2038 DR FAR SUPV. The applicant is requesting a design review and FAR exception to permit a 204 square foot addition, resulting in an FAR of 0.31, where 0.16 is the maximum permitted by code due to the property's 34% slope. A slope use permit to permit 82 cubic yards of site grading, and variances to natural state to permit the reduction of the existing natural state from 52 to 47%, and a variance to setback to permit a proposed decorative roof overhang that encroaches into a required street side yard setback. Now about the project. The subject site is on a slope lot on an existing 8,135 square foot residential parcel with an average grade of 34% and is located in the South Magnolia neighborhood. Of the proposed improvements is a 181 square foot media room and outdoor terrace on the southerly uphill side. The design presents a practical expansion to the home and use of the rear yard. The addition will not result in insignificant impacts to privacy, access to light, air, or views by adjacent properties. However, it is noted that the 11-foot tall retaining wall design along the driveway presents large massing for a small outdoor terrace. Staff recommends that the retaining wall massing is moderated through stair stepping it back from the driveway with the landscape well behind the lower front wall to screen and soften the tall wall. A railing can also be added to the patio to match the residence. Regarding the slope use permit, Excavation into the southern hillside to accommodate the second-story addition and outdoor terrace is proposed requiring this slope use permit. Staff supports the proposal as no map ridgeline will be impacted by the proposed project, and site grading is modest for the size of the property. Will not result in significant modifications of the existing site conditions and topography, and is consistent with the intent and purpose of the slope and hillside regulations. And then finally, regarding the variances, as the subject property is oddly configured and steeply sloped with an existing non-conforming residence located in the street side yard setback, staff will support the 2 variance requests for the decorative roof overhang that encroaches into the required side yard setback and variance permitting the reduction of natural state. The existing unimproved right-of-way provides adequate distance to meet the intent of the setback. Therefore, the decorative garage roof will not create a visual imposition on the street and meets the intent of the setback. The decorative garage roof feature and natural state reduction will not impact adjacent neighbors and will improve the non-conforming portion of the property in a manner consistent with other residences in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Could you tell us what the correct pronunciation of your name is? With what we would rather not mangle it.
Sure. Wakar Shah.
Wakar. Okay, Wakar. Thank you very much. Does anybody have questions for staff regarding this application? Okay. See, no, I actually have one. Wakar, do you mind using perhaps the drawings that are the renditions that are on the screen right now? Tell us exactly what you mean by the massing that you find might be objectionable, and the solution that you're proposing, the step back. Could you sort of indicate to us where that is and how that would work?
Remember you looking at the
Hey, Daniel, it's let me, before you go on, it's Jeff here. I just want to make I forgot, I should have said it beforehand. This house is 350 feet from my house, so I have to obviously recuse myself from discussion on this.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you for that.
This drawing looks better.
Yeah.
So are you referring to the wall where those trellises are?
Yes.
Okay, so and how would the step down work?
Go to the one below.
Essentially, it would break up. It would basically break up and soften the visual imposition onto the street, and
By lowering that well.
it would, by lowering the well, it would screen and soften the tall wall.
Oh, by lowering the well. Oh, okay, I've got it. Okay, all right, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Wakar? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to make any comments or presentation at this point in time.
So we're gonna have to manipulate the screen because he may want us to look at something.
Oh, sorry. Do you see the hand raised here? We need to pick that hand. Okay, we're allowing you to speak. Ryan,
Ryan and Autumn Gibson.
click
yeah.
on it. And then he needs to unmute. Ryan, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I just clicked it. Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
You're
there we go.
welcome to trade your places.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen and Wakar and Daniel. So my name is Ryan Gibson. This is my wife, Autumn. And yeah, just a quick kind of background of the project. I think, you know, my wife and I, we moved into Larkspur just around 6 years ago. And, you know, we love Marin County, but we really do love Larkspur. And Larkspur is the place that we want to raise our kids. We have twin boys who are 6 years old, growing quickly. And the whole goal of this project was really to give them a space where they could grow and have their own space. The house is almost 100 years old as well. So this also gives us the opportunity to tighten things up and do some updates within the existing square footage of the home, which we think will be great for our family and also just help with how the flow of the house has and also give those boys more space to grow. You know, we started this project, I think, probably around 3 years ago. working with Kristen and team and with our architect. And so thank you, Planning Committee. You've been a huge help as we've bounced different ideas around to try to figure out what we could do within the context of what the Planning Commission and the rules of Larkspur are. We've also worked with our neighbors and brought them along the way. So they've been aware of this for a couple of years now as we've moved along this process, and they've seen the renditions, and we've made sure that they're aware as we've moved forward in this process. And yeah, we're just excited to hopefully continue to plant our roots here in Larkspur and, you know, see our boys through high school. And we think that this addition will really allow them to have their own space and for us to grow.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else giving a presentation on your behalf as your architect?
We have our architect Ned and our designer Valerie are also on the call.
Okay,
as
so
well.
if we have questions, they will be there to address them. Thank
Exactly.
you.
I think Ned would like to speak.
Oh, yeah, I see your hands raised now. Yeah, Ned,
Okay.
you have the floor.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, I actually just want to let you know that I'm here and happy to answer any questions that you might have. We did review what Waqar and Kristen have potentially recommended for that wall, and you know, we'd be willing to discuss that with you if that's a major issue for the commission.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners if they have any questions for the applicant.
I have a question for Ned or the owners. Just wondering why, in a structural sense, that little wall where you're trying to park your car is remaining, and it obviously doesn't affect what's happening outside or what it looks like, but just curious.
In the garage itself,
Yeah,
Brock?
yeah. There's.
Yeah, so
It looks like you could just throw a big beam across there and get rid of that thing, but.
yeah, we would love to do that. We were, as Ryan mentioned, we've been sort of slowly working through this project, and one of the prior planners was concerned that the existing garage was not conforming and that we shouldn't alter any of the structures that were in that garage. We would love to remove that wall, and we had in our prior design, but
I think there was a misunderstanding. That wall could go, definitely.
okay.
Otherwise, you can't get to your car if you go through the outside door.
Yeah, exactly. We had that wall removed in a prior rendition, and we were attempting to meet concerns. It sounds like there was a misunderstanding there. So perhaps we can assume that gets clipped off.
That would be great. I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but particularly, but it just would make it a lot more usable.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Brock, do you have anything else?
No, thanks.
Okay, do any of my other fellow commissioners have a question for the applicant or?
Yeah, I have a question. So I saw that the staff had recommended stepping back the wall, the big wall along the driveway, and the architect seemed open to discussion. So I'm actually just curious to know, is that yes, that's something that could work, or what is the architect actually thinking on that?
Yeah, so the reason we had the wall up at the level it is now is to have the planting is just 12 or 18 inches below deck level. So when you're on that outdoor terrace and deck location, you can have that greenery kind of surrounding you and softening the views and so forth. So that's why we had the rim of that planting structure up at the same level as the deck. To lower that wall, we would lower all the planting as well, potentially. And so that planting wouldn't be as close to the deck level. But if that were important to the commission, we'd be certainly willing to study that and potentially do it. I don't disagree that it will present a lower wall at the driveway and along the street, and that could, be a more pleasant experience for, anyone walking up to the house or driving along the street. So I think it's a reasonable idea. We'd be happy to look at it or agree to it tonight if we need to.
Okay, thank you.
Is it all, sorry, would it be possible, is there enough room to leave some of the planting, in other words, split the planting, so you drop a strip of planting down and then there's planting still at deck level? I would leave this up to you as far as I'm concerned, but seems like there's some possibilities.
Yeah, it's 42 inches clear on the interior, if my memory serves me. So that may be enough space to do 2 levels there. That's a nice idea. Yeah, that could work.
Okay, we can discuss how that works procedurally when we get to our deliberation. I gather we will. Any other questions from the commission for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I would invite any other members of the public who wish to comment on this application to raise their hand. And I am seeing no hands raised. So with that, I'm going to close the public meeting and bring it back to the commission for our deliberation, absent Jeff, who is recused. And Natasha, I'll begin with you.
Thank you. So my thoughts on this was, I think this is an awkward lot size and shape with multiple constraints. The proposed design, I feel, actually, to be honest, I feel the applicants and the architects have done a good job of working with what they have, and it has minimal impacts on the neighbors. So my only, I guess, kind of comment, and to be honest, don't feel that strongly about it, but I will say that if staff recommends something, I know they put a lot of thought into it. So with the fact that they would step back that wall, if that's something that they can work with and they can do, I think that would be worthwhile doing. So I have kind of a short really comment here, which is I think I can make the rest of the findings subject to that one comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Brock?
I'm actually okay with it the way it is. I think the treatment on the outside of that wall is going to be kind of nice. I would suggest if they feel up to it that they drop part of the planter down a step just for interest. But I think dropping it down all the way means that you're kind of looking down on top of the bushes and or the planting. And I don't really have a problem with the way it is and could make the findings.
Thank you. Laura?
Yes, I feel similarly. It would be nice if there was a way to maybe drop the wall some, but it sort of lines up with, what's going on the other side of the house, and provides a certain sort of symmetry to me. I mean, if you dropped it, you would just put plants in there that go taller, and it just would take the time for them to get taller. I could go either way, I guess. But sort of as Natasha said, I think when staff recommends something, I tend to give it a little more weight than I might otherwise. So I would be inclined to say I could see my way to approve this and maybe request that they at least look at reducing the height of that wall.
Okay, thank you. Laura, could you adjust your mic a little bit? Yeah, I think we got what you said, but it wasn't entirely, your voice wasn't entirely clear. So
okay, sorry.
Thanks. Okay, so that leaves me. I'm in vehement agreement with everybody else. And I guess so I think I can make the finding. I could probably make the findings with the design as is. However, if some modifications to that wall could be made ministerially, um, then we could, I think we could make the findings and then have those adjustments simply go through Kristen and the rest of the planning department. Kristen, would that be acceptable procedurally?
Absolutely. We can, if you are inclined to modify the wall to break it up a little, then you could just do this as a condition of approval.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think I know what we can do then. So, having heard that, if somebody could craft a motion. You want to take a stab at it, Natasha?
So the motion DRFARSUPV 2038. Wait, I think I started it the wrong way. Did I start it the wrong way? Correct me if I'm wrong. Subject to the applicants working with the planning department on the I guess the wall. How do we describe that wall? I guess the wall along the driveway to step it back. So I'm kind of butchering this motion. I would, yeah, subject to, I guess, the applicants working with the planning department to find an acceptable solution to the planning department for the wall.
Excellent.
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All opposed? None, and we have one recusal. And Christian, or could you maybe have a roll call on this?
Get a roll call?
Yeah, I think we probably ought to.
Commissioner Tauber,
Aye.
Commissioner Wagstaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Kunstler,
Aye.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Aye.
and we will just, for the record, say that Commissioner Swisher is recusing himself.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to the applicant as well. Great. I think we can we move on to our second item for this evening, which is design review, floor area ratio, slope use permit, variance, and heritage tree removal 21-50 for 24 Laurel Avenue in Larkspur. And can we begin with the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Kunstler. Just acknowledging that we did get some late mail forwarded to us from the applicant. First, last Friday, after the packets were done, I had an email from Stuart Summers, which addressed some approaches that the property owner was taking to meet with the neighbor who had written a letter with some concerns. And that was forwarded last Friday. And then I think it was yesterday or today, I forwarded 2 emails from 15 Hazel, the owner of 15 Hazel, who has indicated he was supportive of the project. So I know there was a lot in that staff report to talk about or to think about. So I'm going to give a very brief staff report here, and then I think we can probably address most things with questions. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the subject site is approximately 11,000 square feet with a 20% average slope. It's located in the historic Loop neighborhood on a prominent mapped ridge line surrounded by Hazel and Laurel Avenues. The existing roadway is narrow, it's one way, and it has a variety of oaks that overhang the roadway, including 1 or 2 on this lot. The applicant's proposing the complete demolition of all structures and most site improvements, removal of 9 trees, 7 of which are heritage size, site grading for construction of the driveway across the front of the yard and a partial subterranean garage and home foundations, and construction of a new 3-story residence with an ADU. Permits required in support of the project are a design review, a floor area ratio exception to permit a new residence with a 0.39 FAR, where a 0.30 FAR is permitted by code due to the slope. Slope use permit to both construct the home directly on the ridge line and to excavate and haul away most of 1,160 cubic yards of grading. A variance to permit 3 on-site parking spaces in compliance with code where 4 are required for a new home. And a variance to permit the driveway paving to cover greater than 50% of the front yard area. And lastly, they need a heritage tree removal for the 7 heritage-sized trees that are being proposed for removal. I did note in the staff report that although the project technically complies with natural state, which is a slope use permit type requirement, it's required under the slope and hillside regs, the applicant would exceed the would not meet the natural state requirements, accepting that they have taken half the driveway and converted it to a turf block system that is permeable, and it's acknowledged in our code. That's one of the exceptions for natural state. I just want to make sure you understand that if that's changed or if any patios are proposed in the rear, it would not comply with natural state anymore. So any changes would push this over. Natural state is something I think the city has traditionally been a bit flexible on for good reasons. And just want to bring that up to your attention, that that's one more thing that could get triggered if they ever change this. The neighborhood is notable for having a predominantly large lots with an eclectic range of pretty large homes, that some of which are pretty bulky. I'm sure you've all seen the construction at 74 Hazel that's been ongoing for 2 years. Generally, the design of the residence is attractive. The materials and the finishes are nice. They work together. They combine together in a nice looking home. And based on its placement on the site, it doesn't appear to have any impacts on light, air, or views for immediately surrounding neighbors. However, as proposed, the site redevelopment is significant. It results in multiple variances, an FAR exception, removal of most mature trees, and substantial grading and alteration of the topography. The staff report discussed a variety of concerns for the commission's consideration and points out that the design may not meet the intent and purpose of all the required findings. The subject site is one of the smaller lots in this neighborhood, but is proposing site alterations and additions consistent with lots that are twice its size, if not more. From a review of all permits, including proposed grading plan, it appears the site's being altered substantially to fit the design more than the design has been fitted into the site. The other issues that were raised in the staff report relate to the fact that the grading plan, the architectural design, and the 2-story elevation on the ridgeline do not minimize the perception of bulk or employ notable mass reducing techniques as required in the FAR exception findings. There are alternative approaches also to proposing parking on site, which it was discussed in the staff report for the commission just to consider, because I think all possibilities should be considered before a program like this is approved. And that in the staff report, it was the one item that was presented to you was the possibility of parking from the street level, where it would have a much greater reduction of the grading at the front of the lot. It would also allow you to save more trees, and it would reduce the variance to the paving restrictions. With regard to the variances themselves, the concerns raised in the staff report focused on the fact that it looked like the design was generating the variance more than the site for the paving restrictions. But we do agree that there is some really good justification here for some flexibility in the parking requirements and how the parking requirements are met, because this is a difficult site with the way it's elevated above the roadway, and the roadway is very narrow. So at this point, staff has asked that the commission consider from the applicant, or hear from the applicant, consider the code, the findings that you'd have to make to approve this project, and the various permits, and at the end of your discussion, provide staff with direction on how to proceed and the applicant. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Do any of my fellow commissioners have a question for Kristen, or even more than one question? Casey, I just.
I did have a quick question.
Oh, go
Kristen, did the city engineer look at the turning radius to get into that driveway?
Well, I have to assume they did. I don't know if the civil plans might include some turning radiuses for that, but I believe it was discussed. Certainly that is one of the things that's expected to be reviewed when I send them the plans. He did not talk to me directly about it.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from my fellow commissioners? I have one, Kristen, relating to one of your early comments in your report about the turf block. That the turf block is considered to be semi-permeable or permeable. But if that were to be, replaced with another hardened surface, that the property would no longer meet the natural state requirement. So my question is, well, would any replacement of the turf block be subject to approval by the city? Would an application be for that to happen be necessary?
Well, technically, yes, they would need to apply for a variance, but do they need a building permit of some kind to replace the paving surface? No.
So they could, right, but if they replace the paving surface, even if that were compliant with the building code, but not with the natural state requirement, could that requirement simply be sidestepped?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the?
Well, I mean, you're saying, well, they might not require a building permit for to replace the turf blocks, but it would still modify the property in terms of the natural state requirement.
Correct.
So is this simply an opportunity to sidestep the requirement for natural state at a later date without needing a permit?
Well, if they change it, yes, that would be the case.
Okay. All right.
But I'm not accusing them of
No, of course not.
intending to do that.
That's not our role.
I think you should know too that they have permeable pavers proposed off the back of the home as well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
That was a procedural question. We certainly don't speculate on what people will do in the future. Great. So with that, I'm going to invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to make their comments and presentation.
I believe Mr. Hollander had his hand up first.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Hollander. And if you
Mr.
could
Hollander, you're allowed to speak. You need to unmute, and I have your PowerPoint ready.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm David Hollander.
I'm Sheila Hollander. I guess you can see us. Okay.
I'm their daughter, Jacqueline.
So good evening. We are relatively new to the Larkspur area, but we've been Bay Area residents since the late 80s. Having gone to Berkeley, it's where I met my wife. And COVID really is what drove us over to Marin. We really enjoyed hiking over there. And during COVID, just got cabin fever. So we decided to rent an Airbnb in the Marin area. And that's how we found this home. It was on Airbnb. And we rented it for the month of December in 2020. And we come to love the Larkspur neighborhood. We met some nice friends and were able to walk to town and really liked it. So we started talking to Ron, who was the owner of the home at the time, who owns the property immediately behind 15 Hazel. And some friends recommended that we go talk to Richard and Ed at the Pacific Design Group right there on Magnolia, which we did. That was in January of 21. And they were very impressive. They seemed to know Larkspur very well. They said that after they had some back and forth with staff, that they could create a family home on the existing footprint that you see here in front of you, and came up with roughly the design that you see in front of you today, with the garage being set sort of in the center, a unified structure, and keeping it a 3-level property, which is what it is on the left side. It's a 2-level on the right side currently. Ed, unfortunately, became very ill And we were asked to seek out another architect, which was very sad. We found Stuart Summers, who's a part of SKS, and he spent the last year redefining the design. So we've lived in this house now for over a year and a half. It's a 3-story on the left. There's a spot below. You can see where the rock is, and then there's that first level, there's a second level, then up top is where our bedroom is located currently. And there's another bedroom up there as well. So currently it's a 5-bedroom, 5-bath house with 3 bedrooms upstairs if you include the loft bedroom that's in the ADU unit on the right. And then there's 2 bedrooms downstairs, which you can see there from the windows right above the rock. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Kristen. Right above the rock. So what we're desiring to do, because we've decided to plant our roots here in the community, we really like it. So much so that I opened up a business recently on Magnolia Avenue, right there in the heart of town. We're desiring to essentially replace the existing house, keep it a 5-bedroom, 3-floor level concept, but figured out a much better floor space for us that we can actually use. Sheila and I both have mothers who are in their 70s. They're single. They're going to come live with us, and we think the ADU unit would be perfect for them. We also have a fresh college graduate here, Jacqueline, who's desiring to have her own space as well. So it just works for us. Like I said, we're not going anywhere. We're not flipping this house. We're not developers. There's some people like that in the neighborhood, as you know. They don't do permits. They remodel these homes. They sell them. They're beautiful, but that's not what we're trying to do here. The space as is, we've tried to live in it. It's just not family friendly, whether it's our family or any family. It's just not family friendly. So if we could go to slide 2, Kristen. So this is an example. The house was remodeled. Most of it was not to code. This is the master bedroom. Bathroom, sorry. It's very nice. It's right off the master bedroom. However, you'll notice there's no toilet in it. And so in the middle of the night, when we need to go to the restroom, we have to either walk into a closet where there's a toilet or go into the bedroom, which is behind a staircase, where there's another toilet in this smaller bedroom that's more like a child-sized bedroom. Could we go to slide 3? This is a picture looking down from the loft bedroom into the ADU unit where we would propose that our mothers would eventually live. This is an extremely interesting space, but it's very dangerous. The staircase that is taking you down from where you see is definitely not up to code, and it's just very, very dangerous, especially at nighttime. If you had to go down it, it could essentially kill somebody if they made a false step. So we also came to learn from Stu that most of the staircases in the main home are not code compliant either, and are also downright dangerous if someone tripped, because there's really no support rails. If we could go to the next slide 4. This is the actual ADU unit where you come in through the breezeway. On the left is a bathroom, on the right is a little kitchenette, and then straight in there is the ADU unit where the living space you were just looking down upon. You'll notice the roof or the floor of the bedroom. You're looking at it in the center of that picture. That's the floorboards that support the bedroom above it. If we could then go to slide 12, please.
12?
Yes, I think it's towards the bottom. Sorry, I don't see the numbers. Yes, okay. So this is the parking. I think we may have passed it. I think it was up a little bit. Yeah, this one here. This is fine.
Oops, sorry, I didn't do that.
It's okay. So this is the hill. I believe most of you visited the site, and The major issue on the street is we have to park there on the left. That's where the cars get parked because there's no parking on the space itself. We find it dangerous. At nighttime, when you pull your car and park it there, you have to get out on the left side, which is that hill. And if you make a misstep, you're going to roll down that hill. And that is just frankly super dangerous. So not only is it just unsafe to park there, but it's just a hassle for not only us, but then also anybody who's coming our direction. Right now, as you look at this, they'd be going one way towards us. And so if there's deliveries, traffic gets blocked. If we have to unload groceries, etc., it's just very inconvenient. There's a picture as well. I think we were just looking at it, the first one. I just want to point out again one more up, please. I think it's actually a few more up. It was before the, keep going. Yeah. Next one, please. Yeah, I mean, this one could work. I guess what I'm trying to point out is when you're looking up, you can see there's a series. Thank you. There's a series of stairs you have to go up just to get to the front door, and then you go upstairs again just to get to the kitchen. So you can imagine someone who's in their late 70s trying to do this, or as we get older, we're in our 50s. We do plan on, like I said, living here the rest of our lives. I happen to work a lot with elders, and the reason why we have the driveway into the garage with an elevator is because we would like the premises to be friendly for people who are older, so they can get in and out of the house with relative ease, as opposed to trying to navigate up the staircase. So again, with the access, looking at it from this view as well, you could imagine if there was an emergency, how difficult it could be for an ambulance or a firefighter to get up here and do their job. So we believe that with the fire resistant construction materials we're using, and with the driveway and the way it's been highly engineered, which I know Stu will talk about, that we're gonna bring this property into a much higher safety realm than it is right now. And then lastly, the garbage cans. I know you know the area real well. If you drive the loop, you'll never see any garbage cans except for in front of our house. And so it's unsightly. I'm sure you've seen or heard about the coyotes and the cougars that have been in the area. So trash obviously attracts, especially when it smells good, attracts them down. And we'd obviously like to keep them safe and not get in the way of traffic and neighbors and other people's dogs as well. So since we purchased the property, we've made a lot of efforts to get to know our neighbors. They've been very helpful, even excited, supportive. They've worked with us on the design that you're seeing now, that Stu has incorporated feedback, making concessions, jogging the roof line from what Richard and Ed came up with, putting in setbacks up top. And at this point, we believe that there's overwhelming support in this community to change this eyesore and bring it into conformance with the beauty and the stature of this neighborhood. We're very hopeful to create our forever home here in Larkspur. And we thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Is the architect available for questions, or would he like to make any opening comments of his own?
I just allowed him to speak.
Hey there, Stuart Summers. Yeah, I would like to just pile on a little bit. I'll try not to make it too long. I know there's a lot to unpack here, and I don't want to repeat a lot of what David said, but I have stuff to add to it for sure. First of all, thank you, Kristen, for all your hard work on this. I know you just came up with COVID, and I'm emerging from it today myself. And to you PC members, I really appreciate your time. I know you volunteer. I've been on Santa Rafael's design review for the last 16 years, so I don't take it lightly that you guys have to, dig into these projects, and I know it's hard. So I appreciate your time very much. So on that note, I'll try not to talk for an hour. Our project team is here. We have Dan Hughes, our civil engineer, Zach Vaught, our arborist, and Gary Roth, our landscape architect, should any of those questions arise. So as David pointed out so eloquently, this has been a long road for them, with Ed and Richard and that unfortunate circumstance, and myself being fortunate enough to be contacted by them. I was honored to take over for those guys and fine tune this exercise. A couple of points of clarity. Just I read the staff report. I went back and double check some numbers and things. And one thing I want to stress is I think when Ed and Richard first approached it and talked to staff and talking to the owners, the intent was to reconstruct this home on the same footprint. At one point, there was talk about saving some foundations. So I'm looking at this more of a lens that it wasn't exactly a blank site. We're reconstructing a home predominantly along the same footprint and the same mass and impact as the existing home, but as pointed out, it's an eyesore. So the idea for me was stay on the same footprint and do something better. And I think that's, I feel we've gotten that, but that's, we'll be talking about it for sure.
I'm having trouble with my program. I want to shut some things so that I can get this to work better. I think I have too many items here.
That's okay. And then when you get back to the PowerPoint, if you get there, the one with the slides, might be easier to hit the arrow buttons at the top to go through pages versus the scroll bar. But I got it. I'm having the same difficulties. I'll let you do that while I chat anyways. A lot of it, you guys have studied the plans. I'm sure you've been to the site. So I imagine a lot of this is in your head. So just a couple points. The main floor is 9 inches lower than the main floor of the existing house. The lower floor is a foot lower than the existing house. So the first 2 floors are actually lower. The upper floor admittedly is 9 inches higher than the existing upper level. If that's something we want to discuss, certainly open to that. The roof forms that are there, we have 2 pieces of roof on the gables that are 15 inches higher than the highest point of the existing roofs. We're trying to sort of let you guys know, and if you saw the story poles and realized they're on top of the existing house for the most part, and as you look up, if Kristen does find that slide, that the massing experience from the street really has not been increased in any significant manner at all. So I just want to point out that we're trying to improve what's there and get rid of the eyesore versus, hey, here was this empty hillside and we're putting this new building on it. So again, that's how everybody in the neighborhood wants to get rid of this thing that you're looking at right now. That's been consistent among everybody. We've been thanked so many times for getting rid of this house. So the existing floor areas, the floor area in the staff report was probably pulled from some public records. It didn't take into account the covered deck and the 2-story height space in the barn. So the reality is that the calculated square footage of this house is about 3,700 square feet with an FAR of 46.85. And what we're proposing is a 0.39 FAR. Granted, we are gaining some land for the driveway. And sorry, I'm a little hoarse here. So I just wanted to point those kinds of things out in order to just kind of color my opinion on it a bit. So the front yard variance for paving, yes, turf block is clearly identified in your code as not counting against natural state. We have no intention of changing it in the future. We found something we liked. We have people here and myself that do, like to follow the code and the rules. They're there for a reason. So there's lots of turf blocks. You can park fire trucks and all kinds of clever items on. The code also says, if Alvin is amenable to it, it says any material that is permeable and accepted by the Department of Public Works. So if Public Works decides in the future, your department has that control to say if another material is acceptable or not. And it clearly says that it's Public Works' call. There is some kicking of that back and forth. So maybe the code next needs to be cleaned up a little bit. We'll leave that to Elise. Welcome to the party. So what else can I have to say? So the driveway. A lot of talk about the driveway. I've got Dan Hughes on the horn if somebody really wants a detailed civil engineering opinion. I appreciate staff's thought that it might be less invasive to bunker in something from the street. And I would say that we've studied it extensively and categorically actually oppose and disagree with that assessment. We've got 6 or 7 feet from the edge of paving before we get to the front property line. So if we're going to put 2 cars of garage, 2 cars of parking, and then the required site distance triangles for safety, we're essentially going to excavate the entirety of the frontage of that property for 80 feet or more and 30 feet into the hillside. It will actually be more invasive and have massive retaining walls in order to achieve. And we'll also be backing cars onto Laurel. And to my mind, in terms of intent, I don't think the intent would be to be that urban and be driving around Laurel and seeing 80 feet of structure versus a big landscape buffer up to a shorter wall, a driveway, and a shorter wall that we've largely disguised with landscaping. So I just wanted to, intentionally say that we don't think, and our professional team doesn't think that concept is even feasible. So I can let Dan speak to that if you have some more questions of them. It's just, frankly, it's brutal. Parking, yeah, we're 1 space down. We're hoping we can, that's better because we have 0 now. So to go to 0 to 3, technically under your code, but really 4 because we have a deep space in the garage, which it doesn't meet your code by 2 feet wide. It's 10 feet instead of 12. I drive an SUV and have a 10-foot wide garage in San Rafael, and I get in there and out of it every single day. So I do think it's another part of your code that I don't know if the 12 foot is kind of arbitrary, but you can get out of your SUV in 10 feet. So I really think, practically speaking, we have 4. We've gone through great lengths to make sure in this driveway that we can come out and maneuver a car so we're coming out facing forward for safety reasons. We don't want anybody backing down this driveway, and I don't think anybody wants anybody backing on the Laurel. It's just frankly dangerous. All right, the trees. We have our arborist here. The trees are a big issue, whether we bunker the garages in or build a garage driveway up this hill. The big oak right in the middle of the lot is just, unfortunately, we can't provide the parking on this site in any way, shape, or form without the removal of that tree. And, I don't like it. Nobody really likes it. But it's just a necessary thing. And it's unfortunate. We have a redwood next to the house. We're exploring heroic measures to shade it. We've talked to our arborist. He thinks we can pull it off. So if you have questions about that, the black acacias, no one's going to miss. They're nasty trees. And the Doug fir in the back for fire removal was really the concern. Maybe through some great pruning and whatnot, that tree might, be retained on the site. So we can let Zach chat with that as well. I think I just spoke about the FAR. We're coming in at 39. When I talked to Kristen at the beginning of this exercise, because I did see that the prior design asked for 43, and that was a red flag to me. And I talked to Kristen, and she said, people asking for up to the baseline, the 40, is generally something that's not unreasonable. So I used that as a goal to keep it under 40, which is why we have this thing at 39 right now. And I think I just hit kind of the major points that were in the staff report. Closing, what I have to say in my comments are, it's a complicated site. And I think we do believe that our project solves a myriad of all the problems that exist there, and the mitigation measures we've presented, arrive at a project that's far more desirable than what we see there. And I think, in some form, it meets the intent of the code by having that landscaping and the way the building is stepped, providing the parking, and making some of those trade-offs, So again, we can get down to the minutia of the code. Did we meet this? Did we meet that? I think we met the majority of them, but when I'm in your guys' shoes, sometimes I ask myself, is this just a good project? Has it improved the neighborhood? Has it removed a long-standing deficiency? You know, and I think we've done that. So I hope you guys can look at it a bit through that lens, particularly when I believe a great number of the overwhelming and the majority of the neighbors who are the ones that really matter because they have to live with this project here, they want it. So, you know, I hope that their voices are heard a little bit too. And Kristen, can you go to that last slide on this? I just wanted to talk to one point. It's an aerial photo. It's in their packet. Oh, it's in the PowerPoint, the SKS 24. No, you got it. It's just a tab. It's open already. Right in the middle. There you go. And then the very last page. That's the loop, guys. So I understand the natural state and the concern about overdevelopment and paving and all those questions, but right there at the bottom middle is our footprint. And in a way, because the house is 3 stories, we've actually minimized the footprint and impact on the land compared to some of these other properties. When you see the vast footprint of these other homes and the amount of paving, and look at the one on the right, you know, these homes are huge. The impacts, I think, are fine because, you know, they're there and they were approved. And I don't believe we're asking for any stretch or form, even half of what some of these properties have. So in terms of, I don't know, precedence or the fabric of this neighborhood, I think we're doing pretty good. So I'm hoping that means something, guys. And Dan, if you're on the line, if you guys can let Dan Hughes in just to kind of get in on this driveway a little bit, if he wants to just confirm what I've said from an engineer's standpoint about an alternative to this. I know he studied it many times in different forms, so he might be able to speak to that, and then we'll go to questions. And thanks for indulging me.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Hughes, yeah, you can speak now. I think you are unmuted.
I believe that I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good evening, folks. Dan Hughes, DVC Group. I am the civil engineer for the project, and Stuart hit it. I can't really say a whole lot more other than just to add to what he said. In order to grade in a garage, there is roughly 10-foot elevation change from the existing surface down to the roadway surface. And the garage, to cut that in, you would have about a 20-foot wide by 20-foot depth garage and a 20-foot depth driveway for the parking. And that has to start, you know, we have the property line, as Stuart indicated, that's 6 or 7 feet off the existing edge of pavement. So it would have to be dug in very deep into the site from the edge of the roadway. And with the width required to have a safe view triangle, because you don't want to dig that in and have walls on either side of you, because when you back out, you cannot see oncoming traffic. So we would have to put flares in there and widen it for the parking. My quick calcs tell me that it would roughly be 50% more earthwork for the garage than what we're currently proposing. So I think the earthwork impact would be more. And I don't really see it being better in any way than what we're proposing. It would have more earthwork, and I think it would be more unsafe in the backing out with visibility obstructions and such. We did take a look at it, and I just don't think that it's a viable option as compared to what we have here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, I had a quick question for Dan. This is Brock Wagstaff. So at the point of your driveway entrance, Laurel Avenue, not counting the pullout for the neighbor across the street, is about 12 feet wide, at least as far as I could tell. And a sedan takes about 34 feet or something like that to circumference to turn. And I presume you've worked out the numbers, but it looks really, really tight to me, particularly if somebody parks in that strip next to the house across the street.
If we could possibly zoom in to any of the site plans that shows that driveway. If it's easy to go to the civil sheet C2, or again, any site plan that shows the driveway and the street.
Let's do your civil sheets. I had them up originally.
That's okay. So Brock, you're right. You have a roughly a 12-foot wide street. I think it does get a little bit wider there because there's the driveway across the way, but there's also a little bit of a widened road there. I don't want to call it a shoulder, but there's something there that's a little bit wider, and it is a one-way street, not a two-way street.
Right. Yeah,
So
I know.
Yep. So somebody driving up there can use the entire 12-foot width. They can go far left because it is one way. And that dimension that you refer to, the 30 some odd feet or whatever it might be, we have the 12-foot width of the street. We also have the width of the driveway, and we have the landscape island in between. So when you're talking about a turning radius for a vehicle, when you take all that width and add it up, we are approaching that width that you're referring to. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that a Ford F-150 full-size truck is going to easily get in here and whip around this turn. I think a standard passenger vehicle and or anything smaller than a standard, a Prius or something like that, can navigate this turn and make it up this driveway. We have looked, and you can see one of my sheets, I believe the last sheet, I'm not certain, but it has the turning maneuvers on up in the garage. Public Works did review this. Public Works was asking.
Plan.
I'm sorry, Kristen?
The turning radiuses are in the architecture plan.
Oh, got it. So we did do a study of the driveway turning for the back out to be able to back out and get down the driveway, because that's what Public Works, I believe it was Public Works, had asked us to do. So we did that. There wasn't a concern from Public Works about the driveway entrance off of the street.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Do any of the other commissioners have questions for the applicant? And then we will move on to other public comments. Okay, seeing none, I would like to invite anyone else in attendance if they wish to comment on this application. And I see Mr. Greenberg, or I don't know if Mr. or Ms. Greenberg's hand raised.
He's allowed to talk?
Yeah,
He needs to unmute.
unmute. There we go.
Yes, it would be Mr.
Okay.
There is no Mrs. Greenberg. My name is Jeff Greenberg. I actually have two houses right here in the loop in the vicinity. And I just want to say I'm completely supportive of this project for the reasons that everybody's talked about. But just to reiterate, the cars parked on the shoulder, I walk my dog around this circle 4 times a day. And when there's a car parked there and a car coming, it's just not that safe. And otherwise, it's a great street. That house is probably the ugliest house in our neighborhood, and it would be great to upgrade that. I completely understand. I'm a builder, and I completely understand the desire to try to do the driveway down below. But I got to tell you, looking at the 20-foot high retaining walls at 74 Hazel right next to me is got to be one of the most god-awful, ugliest designs I've ever seen. And I'd be thrilled not to have to see retaining walls at another street level in the neighborhood. So I think putting the driveway up top and not having to do a bunch of retaining wall work would be beneficial. I would love to see if we could save the heritage redwood tree up at the top. That's good to hear that Zach may have a solution for that because I hate seeing those heritage redwood trees go. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment on this application? Okay, I see John Meerhofer's hand raised. So Kristen, could we allow him to?
Sorry, I'm struggling with this. My computer keeps freezing. There's so many layers in these plans.
Okay, I'll
John, you're allowed to talk.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, so you guys can hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. I mean, you guys are using Zoom webinars, so I can't send emojis to chat or to you guys or anything, but if I could, I'd send 2 thumbs up on the design, perhaps followed by like a dancing ninja or something. I support it. It is a lot more attractive. I mean, it's very attractive by any standard, but I'm thankful that we're getting rid of the existing house. And it is a challenging site. I mean, I've seen a lot of houses being built, and you know, the architect that has to deal with that site is a good architect if he can pull it off. So it's just a tough site. Given all possible variations in the driveway and what's been discussed, I think they have a good solution, and I'm grateful for the street to be more clear of cars, and for cars not to have to back out onto that loop, because I do think that it is a dangerous endeavor to back out onto that loop, but especially, you get the odd person who drives a little bit faster than the speed limit, sometimes like twice as much. And I'd hate to be backing out doing that. The owners also, they took a lot of effort to be transparent with the neighbors, which was great. I mean, they spent a lot of time talking through it, making sure that people could see the plans, and we're grateful for that too. And developers have built some wonderful houses in the town. There's no doubt, but I often really value when owners can get houses through, because owners are committed to it long term, and the quality of the product, has maybe a bit more mechanics behind it to make it a higher quality product. They're much more invested in it, so I think that's a good benefit of the project too. I think this design is, it's not just tailored around their needs. I think it kind of serves generations of owners to come too. I mean, in 70 years, I don't know if the Hollanders' grandkids are going to own the house. I doubt it. So it's just good to know that it could serve multiple configurations of families as well. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. I see Mr. Jennings' hand is raised.
Mr. Jennings, you're allowed to talk.
Actually, Mrs. Jennings.
Oh, Mrs.
I agree with the 2 other neighbors who just spoke. I too am a longtime Larkspur resident, and I also walk my dogs and run on Laurel a lot. And I think that the Hollanders design is not only beautiful and well thought out, but it's super functional. And by adding a garage, I think it'll make it a lot safer on Laurel for everybody. And I think that I love that they have their business in downtown Larkspur. I think that they're committed to the community, and I would just love to see their project get approved. I think it'll be an incredible addition. So that's my neighborly input. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Oh yes, I see another hand raised. Colette Wright.
Colette, you're allowed to speak.
You
need to unmute.
This is Peter Wright, actually. I'm speaking on behalf of Colette and myself.
Could you move a little closer to your microphone?
Sure. Is that a bit better?
That is.
Yeah. So I'm Peter Wright is my name. I'm speaking on behalf of Colette, my wife, and I. So we are the neighbors who live right directly across the street. So we're probably going to get the maximum benefit from the improvement in the parking situation. And, also the removal of the, less than brilliantly attractive current property that's there. So, you know, I just hope that the planning committee can bear in mind that it's a very difficult site, and it's not, I know it's considered a new property, but it's really a replacement property. And we have to compare it not to a piece of green land that's beautiful and sitting there, but it's going to be a massive improvement over the current situation. Yeah, so we're very supportive. We can't wait to get the cars off the street and the trash cans off the street and make a bit of room there, and just have something that's nicer to look at. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much. I see one more hand raised, David Turner. And if you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. My wife Ellen and I live directly north of the Hollanders property. So bottom of our yard backs onto their yard. So we're very familiar with the property. We've watched it be sort of mangled and redeveloped by somebody who flipped it, trying to make it look nice, and in our opinion made it look worse. Didn't follow code, made all sorts of, as David pointed out, all sorts of strange improvements. We'd love there to be a really well-designed house on this property. We actually built our own house and went through a very long process with the city to arrive at what we think is a great design. We love it. It's won national architectural awards. We're very proud of it. And we faced a lot of the same issues that the Hollanders are facing, specifically with the driveway. We were asked to look at, can we do park at the street? You know, it's less invasive to the property. Can we just sort of dig out part of the street and put it there? And actually, yeah, Kristen, you probably can find a picture in there somewhere of our driveway. You know, when you first cut this driveway, it's kind of scary. You take a big chunk out of the hillside, and it looks like you're really going to destroy the neighborhood. That's it, that's our driveway. But in the end, what you end up with is a narrow opening from the street. And the experience of walking around the street is retained, basically. In our case, we had to retain an old stone wall. And we retained pretty much all of it. We just had this opening, and then we landscaped some big retaining walls for the driveway because we were able to do that. If you're forced to do park at street, you have a giant retaining wall, then a parking space. It starts looking like a parking lot at the street. And as Jeff Greenberg said, we all walk around the street. We walk our dogs. The way this thing looks, the feeling at the street is really important to all of us. On top of that, to us, it's really important. Well, how does this relate to our property? Our bedroom looks straight out this property. And, you know, I really think the Hollanders have done an amazing job of consulting with the neighbors, being thoughtful about the design, trying to design something that is essentially, if you look at the story poles, it's essentially in roughly the same space. Slight variation, but nothing significant. They've designed a house that we're all going to enjoy looking at and walking past. And, you know, they're prepared to invest a huge amount of money in our neighborhood to do something really nice that everybody wants. So I would just really urge the commission to say, yes, let's do this. Let's make this project happen. Let's put a house that the whole neighborhood can be proud of in a spot where currently there's an eyesore. And that's all my comments.
Thank you very much. Okay. I don't see any more hands raised.
Oh.
At this time. Yeah, I think all hands have been now brought down. So with that, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for our deliberation. And Brock, I would like to start with you.
Thank you, Daniel. So I would like to see the city engineer confirm that you can actually make that turn into that driveway. I understand that they want to get up on the property. I think that makes some sense. And I had a question for Kristen, because from what I could find out, the original house was built in 1910. And I presume it's not on the historic registry relative to that.
No,
Okay, that's good to know.
it's been modified a lot too. In fact, they did get some permits for some of the work they did there. And some of the spaces are lofted, but they're not intended to be double counted necessarily. They have to exceed 15 feet in height.
Yeah.
The bedroom in the ADU that he calls it an ADU is not supposed to be a bedroom, but a storage space. So, I mean, there's been a lot going on that site.
Yes, I can see that. It's, I do find it kind of interesting that in the site data table, what he refers to as the ADU in the existing house is not subtracted from the square footage, but the ADU in the new house is. But that's my pet peeve with ADUs, and that has nothing to do with anything. I think I can support the project. I think the house is pretty dramatic and pretty interesting, and you know, that whole neighborhood has really big houses. And it's amazing that somebody's willing to put that kind of time and effort and money into it. So that's my thoughts for now.
Okay, thank you. Laura, I'm going to move on to you.
I guess first off, I want to say that I really appreciate all the neighbors coming out and in support of the project. And there was definitely some themes there about wanting to get cars off the street and being concerned about safety, and having the garage there to provide additional parking, and getting rid of an eyesore. And I can really appreciate all of those things. Where I think I come out is, I just think this is too much house for the site. I guess I have a pet peeve on not counting ADUs too. So you're not counting the ADU and you're not counting the garage, and it's just a really big house. And I just don't feel like I can get to the floor area ratio exception, because I think it's too much house. I think I could, I'm also concerned about all the trees. I guess I feel like if it was a smaller house, I'm sort of okay with the driveway. I understand why it's happening. I understand that, and the slope use permit and the natural area issue. I guess I can support what they're doing there, and the parking spaces also. But where I really have issues, I guess, again, is removing the trees and the floor area ratio. I think if you had a smaller house, you wouldn't have to remove so many trees.
Not true. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was on.
Yeah, we do have to close the public hearing.
Yeah, you should be muting me.
Yeah, I didn't know you were on. How did you get over there?
Sorry.
Anyway, those are really my thoughts.
Okay, well, thank you, Laura. Jeff.
Well, I disagree with Laura. I think that the house is, fine sized for the neighborhood. If you saw some of those other houses there, they're a lot bigger and much bulkier than this design. I think this is a very nice design. I think the area can support this kind of house that's as big as this. I agree with Brock that it'd be nice to see the engineering to make sure the driveway can actually work. And I completely appreciate that. I walk my dogs up there as well. We have a lot of friends in that neighborhood. Hello to Peter Wright. He's a fellow anesthesiologist who talked. I think that, again, it's a very nice design. It's beautiful. The finishes are nice. It is a big house. There's no question about it. And I am, like Laura, I'm upset about the fact that especially an oak tree has to be removed, because we've had a problem with oak trees dying, and there's a wonderful book I just read about oak trees that makes me sad that an oak tree is taken out. But so, if you're going to design a house, sometimes unfortunately that has to happen. So I could support the project, but I would like to see a little bit more about the engineering of the driveway. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I was initially a little dismayed about the Berkeley part, but what are you going to do?
Thank you for that, Jeff. Natasha.
Yeah, thank you. I landed closer to Laura actually on this. But let me just go through, I kind of went to the punchline straight away, but just kind of to take you there. I did actually want to thank specifically the architect and the applicant's presentation. I thought they were both incredibly helpful, and I'm very happy when they make such sort of help, kind of detailed, and they talk through why they did what they did. I always find that super helpful. And I also wanted to thank all the neighbors coming out. I think it was great that they took the time to come and show their support for the project. And based on the neighbors, I kind of swayed more kind of one direction than the other. So I think it does help a lot when the neighbors do come out. I think just to go through the individual items that we kind of need to address, I think on the driveway, I actually prefer the design they currently have, the one that goes up straight up, as opposed to one that would come in from the ground. I think that's actually a nice design. And I can make the findings for the parking, the 3 parking spaces. They clearly are solving a problem for parking right now. So that's something that we should be able to work with, the 3 parking spaces. I can also make the findings for the slope use permit. On the trees, though, I did hear, I mean, I'm all for keeping trees when we can. I did go see the property, and I just thought the redwood tree on the, I think it was the south side, was a beautiful tree. And if there's some way to save that, I would like to see that. I would be all for that. And I know the staff report had mentioned number 11 and number 10 actually is also, if those could be saved as well. I think the rest all make sense to be removed. And then I guess really just the one thing I just wanted to sort of, and I'm putting it out there, like on the floor area ratio, it is a lot of house. And I know the architect addressed the fact that there are a lot of houses that are very large in this neighborhood. I think the one distinguishing factor with this particular lot is this lot is much smaller than all those other lots. So they had a lot more room to build a large house and stick with and comply with a lot of provisions in the code. I think it's harder for this particular applicant because they've got a sort of split lot, and the lot is much smaller. I don't think it needs to come down in size that much, to be honest. I think we can, it doesn't, I mean, the design is beautiful, and I'm not an architect, so it'll be hard for me to make recommendations on that front. The one sort of thought I had on it was that it was very imposing. Just it's a very imposing site, and that's just something to kind of keep in mind. It's high up there on the ridge. Having said that, it's so much better than what's there right now, and I would not want to discourage the owners to keep moving forward with this project. So, so that's my thoughts for now.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. I guess that leaves me, and I'm pretty much on the same page as Natasha and Laura on this. If you were looking at the precedents, if that was really sort of the benchmark, then this would be pretty much of a slam dunk. It's really sort of funny. I walked up and looked at the property before I read the neighbors' comments, and before I actually read the staff report, and looked up at this house and, oh my gosh, what an eyesore. So I definitely on the same page as the as the neighbors on that front, and certainly understand their concerns about about getting cars off the street in that particular area. I actually did walk up there with my dog. Um, yeah, essentially putting myself in your shoes. And there was a UPS truck coming up there. There was actually a car going in the wrong direction up there. So, from a safety standpoint, it definitely is problematic, and anything that can be that could help remedy that situation should in fact be welcome. And I can certainly understand the neighbors' concerns about the parking situation, and also confronting something which is that ugly in their midst. So I'm definitely sympathetic. Um, and as you probably are hearing, it's pretty much the attitude of this commission to try to get to yes when we see something like that, even if we do find things that we do see as problematic. I do have to say that, like Natasha, I came into this meeting less sympathetic with the project than I'm now coming out of it with. So there's definitely that consideration, but I just think it's too big. True, there are other huge houses on the in the vicinity. That's true. But this is, as the staff report does point out, this is a smaller lot. We're really up at the edge in terms of natural state conservation, and then we have the issue with the trees. Particularly the oak and the redwoods. I'm happy to see the acacia gone. I'm happy to see the Douglas fir gone. Actually, as an aside, I would be inclined to advise to take the Douglas fir down, even if it weren't necessary, because of its fire-prone nature. And it's come to my attention that the insurance companies are starting to rattle the sabers around fire. So anything that can mitigate fire, I think, is something that we should be sympathetic to. And I do recognize as a challenging site. I just think it is a little bit oversized for the lot. We definitely use floor area ratio as kind of our benchmark, as I've put it in the past. That is, that requirement is not gospel, but it does have to have teeth. Meaning that if we see, well, okay, the floor area ratio benchmark falls where it does, but does it overbuild a lot or not? And that's kind of the question, because we really want to respect the spirit of the ordinances, and not only the letter. And the idea that we can in fact grant variances just recognizes that our goal is to respect the purposes of our various city ordinances. So, with that, I've got to say that I do appreciate the neighbors coming out. I very much appreciate the presentations that were made by the applicant and by the architect. But I can't really propose specific modifications right here, but I would like to see something just a size down, even just a little bit, particularly with the natural state in mind. So those are my thoughts. So now we have to craft a motion. Laura, I could ask you to do that.
Daniel, before you proceed, I noticed that Stuart Summers has his hand up.
I see two hands raised. I actually see three hands raised.
Right, two of them are neighbors and one is the applicant.
You know what? I'm going to. Why don't we allow the applicant to speak, or to the architect to speak?
Hi there.
Even though the meeting is the public portion of the meeting is theoretically closed, but go ahead.
Yeah, I understand the slippery slope. Technically, if I speak, then you're supposed to allow the public again to speak. Granted, we don't have many members out there, so hopefully this isn't detrimental and hopefully positive. I think what I would ask before you craft your motion would be to give us some direction, like very clear direction. Are you? I don't know how we increase natural state, because most of it is because of this driveway, and that is kind of, that commodity just is what it is. We got to get the cars up there, unless you're suggesting we lose guest parking,
No,
which we fought so hard to get. So I don't know how we do that. The footprint, if we're talking about reducing the footprint, I would just, I don't know if you guys want to deliberate further. We're building a side of the garage. We're putting this house on the same footprint it's on. That right side where the redwood tree is exactly on the same line. So is the suggestion that we can't or shouldn't build on the same footprint as the existing house and somehow reduce it? So I don't know if that's, I philosophically, into the letter of your code, I hear what you're saying. Practically speaking, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense. So then we shift back to the mass and the building. Are you asking us to maybe step the upper level in a little bit over on the bedroom side? I know you can't design it for us, but some sort of target might help us get to a something that's more that we can just. I don't think you're going to give us a condition of approval tonight, but that'd be great to work with staff. But I'm looking for some direction from you guys on what you're really asking for.
Okay,
Daniel, I think that's a very,
reasonable.
sorry. Can I make a comment on that, Daniel? Would that,
Please do.
would I be? I think that's a very fair question, and I'm glad the architect has asked that to get some guidance. I do want to kind of comment that there was a lot of, nobody seemed to like the existing design, and no one seemed to like the existing house. So trying to strive to keep the same footprint is not necessarily a good thing. So I'll just make that one comment. My thought, and this is more just for comment with my fellow commissioners, is that, and I kind of use the word imposing, it's such a big house that just goes straight up at the top of a hill. I like the idea of it being set in further up on the upper floors, so it's not such a, I know I'm afraid I'm not an architect, so my vocabulary is not very strong in this part, but just not having it just go straight up and having it step in, I think would just add some more design features that would look less bulky, I guess, or just less imposing. Maybe one of my fellow commissioners can describe that in a better way, but that was more for discussion with for the commissioners as opposed to a direct comment to the architect.
Well, Brock is an architect. Maybe Brock can give some thoughts into that.
As an architect, I also understand how difficult it is to pare little bits and pieces out of a house. I think one of the things in terms of, so they have a 10-foot ceiling in the main floor. In terms of reducing the mass a little bit, that's a hugely tall ceiling. 9-foot ceilings are still pretty tall. And then I would say that if there's a way to slip back the master bathroom, which is up in this area here, so that this becomes more, it's not just a flat plane with some roof changes above, that you actually start to see things moving backwards and more articulation. But as I said, I could probably be okay with this house. I think it's well designed, and it is really a big house. And again, to my thing about ADUs, even on the main floor, which has a big dining room and a kitchen and things, there is no powder room. And the only way you're going to eventually get a powder room is to knock a hole in the wall that goes to the bathroom that's in the ADU, which is what's going to happen. So you've got 704 square feet of what people normally wouldn't have in Larkspur's ordinances. So I think pulling some square footage, out of it, and a little more articulation, it's really hard to tell somebody what they might be able to do.
Yeah, in terms of guidance, I think it's just add a little bit more articulation and perhaps working with that plate height on that 10-foot plate height or ceiling height rather would probably go a ways to alleviating some of our concerns about the overall
I think if you go to the master bedroom, there's room to articulate the bedroom itself, and it's really a huge bathroom in a pretty big closet. So maybe there's space to lose, and maybe if they need it, it could articulate better by pushing out toward the back. But I know from personal experience how hard it is to sort through these things.
Yeah, it's hard to slice and dice. I get it, but there's something like a plate height. That's certainly easily achievable. Even playing with a few roof pitches is achievable. Although I think in this case, it's not the ridges we see as from the down at the street level as much as the eaves. So I appreciate those comments and fully understand them. I have a hard time, I've been doing this, Brock, not quite as long as you, Brock, and I love your work. And we could talk about that another time. It is unusual, I think we're getting hung up on policy, and I do believe policy is important. But in my 35 years and being on my own board for so many years, when the neighborhood so overwhelmingly comes out in support and has reviewed it so carefully, to hear that policy is dictating us change it just because for the sake of policy, it's a little hard to swallow sometimes. And it is what it is. I'm not criticizing you guys. I'm just hoping that you can see that that the people that really matter on this circle, who are going to experience this on a day-to-day basis, are the ones that I think matter immensely, at least to me, when I'm ruling on something. And then also, I know you don't want to set precedents, but every one of these projects comes in front of you anyway. So I don't know. We're willing. If we want, if chopping a foot out of the height of this building will make you guys get us to some sort of conditional approval, or if 2 or 3 moves get us to a conditional approval, so we would at least come back to you on consent or however, and you could pull it off a consent. So our professional team could keep moving, because we're kind of racing this this year. And I know that's not your problem at all, but it's just a reality.
No,
so I don't know if there's some suggestions you guys could make to get us over the hump tonight or not.
You've heard some of the suggestions, and just a couple of reactions to what you said from my standpoint anyway. I can't speak for the others. Is that, well, yeah, there is policy, there are ordinances, and in fact it's our mandate to use them, to call the balls and strikes, as somebody once famously said. And in fact, we have a little bit of leeway because, it's just like the umpire behind the plate, decides where the strike zone is. We have some of that function as well in this instance, but we still have to be guided by the city ordinances and not just by our own preferences, because in fact, I do find this property quite attractive. So I would offer that. And the other thing I just want everyone to understand is that, and here I think I can speak for my fellow commissioners, is that, we always try to get to yes. I mean, that's our role is not to say no and pound our fist on the table. We view our responsibility as making every effort to get to yes on these kinds of projects, or on any kind of project. So just please be aware of that. But I think you've heard in terms of direction, because pretty much that's all that we can do. I think that you've heard in terms of direction. Yeah, if you sort of can work with the articulation, maybe work a little that plate height just to add just a tad bit more modesty to the dimensions of this house. I think it would be helpful. And I understand the I understand the difficulty with this site, as my other commissioners do as well. So we're not asking. I don't think we're going to be asking for heroics, but something to try to to try to add a little bit more modesty to the dimension.
It's clear, very clear to me. So I definitely understand that direction. Just so you guys know, I get it.
Okay.
Are we able to offer the applicant an opportunity to do what we did for Owlswood, where, because I think it's just one issue, which we're all sort of, I mean, the main issue I think we're all concerned about is the floor area ratio and the massing that goes with that, that they work with the planning department, or is that going to be too difficult here?
This is too big. I don't agree.
Okay.
I don't either. We should bring it back.
Yeah, I
But
think we have to bring it back. I mean, we could do a continuance. It would appear that that Mr. Summers already has some ideas about what he might be able to do. So we could either, I mean, there are two ways we could go. We could offer a continuance. I mean, we could offer a denial without prejudice, which would allow the applicant to appeal this to the city council, if that's their preference. But generally, we leave that up to the applicant, out of fairness to them. So whoever is proposing the motion could either propose for denial or propose a continuance. What are we thinking?
I would go for a continuance if Stuart's okay with that. I think you're pretty close.
Yeah, I think
I would have to confer with my client to see what they'd like to do. We might want to ask them here. It does sound like we're close, but I can't speak for them.
I mean, no, neither.
I mean, I know I could make some changes for you guys. The other side of me kind of leans on what I said before, that it's just such an overwhelming amount of support that I know you guys have the ability to look at all these projects on an individual basis. So, and I don't really believe the precedents. And that's just me personally. It's not a criticism of you guys. It's just that's why we're all on these boards. We have different opinions.
Yeah, and again, we do try to get to yes. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah, I hear that quite clearly. So if we're gonna ask, if you're asking us, if we want a flat out denial or not, I think you guys need to unmute the Hollanders and ask them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
He's unmuted. Just for clarity, staff does hear about projects like this. People point to them and say, you approved it here. So this is what I want as well. It is something that gets the attention of people. And so you do need to approve something for the site and make the findings for that site very clear.
Hi, this is Sheila Hollander, and I'm not making a decision in this statement about how to proceed. I just wanted to say that I'm thrilled you've all visited the site. Obviously, that's incredibly important. And I also want to thank our neighbors who have been incredibly kind and supportive, and so appreciate their time. But if you do visit the site, or when you did, the problem with looking at the view that you're looking at right now straight on is that any home on a hill, you're looking up at it. And so of course it's going to appear quite large. The current home appears quite large. And so I think we're at an incredible disadvantage because of the position on the hill, obviously for numerous reasons, parking and all that's been beaten to death. The other thing I just want to say is we have worked now with two incredibly talented architects who have gone around and around and around on the numbers, on bringing that, FR down, on the square footage, all of that, the footprint, which we thought our neighbors would be pleased to keep the footprint the way it was. And so my head is jumbled right now, and forgive me for not speaking very coherently, but this has been a huge undertaking for all four of us, all four of our members of our family. And if there is any way that you could consider a conditional approval this evening, if we were to lower ceiling heights, or we could discuss the bathroom or the closet, whatever it is, because to now go back and try, even with your guidance, to figure out how you would get to an approval in the future, it's just incredibly disheartening, especially with so much approval of the neighborhood with so much excitement from our neighbors.
Yeah, I understand that. I do understand that, Sheila. I do have to say, I guess I wish we actually could do that, but procedurally it's very, very difficult because we actually have to approve a plan that we can actually see. Um, and we've attempted this before. We've had this discussion many times. Could we put in a whole bunch of conditions and then move on to approval? Actually, we had an application just at the last meeting that was exactly that as well. But we couldn't do that, so we went for a continuance, which allowed the architect to make some modifications, but without necessarily going and redesigning the whole thing from the ground up, or again going through some heroics, but making some adjustments that would sort of address the concerns. And of course, you'd be working with a extremely talented staff at the planning department as well, to help you along the way. And again, we try to get to yes. We really, really, really do. And we represent the entire community of Larkspur and Greenbrae. And while we definitely listen to the neighbors and very much appreciate what they had to say this evening, we're responsible toward the entire community and not just the community within a single neighborhood. And as Kristen pointed out, yeah, I mean, when we start setting precedents, people do use those precedents as leverage, and we just have to guard against that. So I guess that's how I would respond to you. And I do sympathize. I know you want to get on with your life. You want to get on with this project. And we're going to do our best to try to accommodate that, but within essentially the boundaries of our mandate. I guess that's how I would respond. So I don't know if any of my fellow commissioners want to weigh in on that.
I hope that the applicants are somewhat encouraged the fact that we were good with their design on the driveway.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, and I was swayed by that this evening.
Yeah, I very much so, and and also there was a lot of things I think we could have gone either way on, but there was I think we kind of narrowed it really only down to the kind of massing and the trees. So hopefully, they were encouraged that if we're
correct.
I'm sorry, Kristen.
And the driveway turnout as well.
To be confirmed, yeah, by somebody, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this project is running out of time on the initial 60 days for action. It was deemed complete on May 5th. So we really need to require or have the applicant request the one-time 90-day extension of the processing time limit in order for you to continue this project.
Okay, is the applicant ready to make that request?
Give me 2 minutes. We're trying to, this is the glory of Zoom. We're texting each other for a moment.
Of course, just for the property owner's edification, you ask for the one-time 90-day extension of processing time. It does not mean the city's going to take 90 days to process. That's just what the law allows for. It requires one-time 90 days.
And that would be, so we can ask for that regardless. Okay, I think I have some clarity, and I'm going to make sure. I believe, yes, we want the 90-day extension for sure, and I believe we will. I think what I've heard here is that we're agreeing to a continuance to revise make some revisions to the project based on the consensus items.
Okay, thank you.
And let me make sure. Oh, now I got one saying he wants the denial. Can we unlock David and Sheila? Because I don't want to get this wrong.
They are unlocked.
You can hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just have, again, I'm looking at the numbers. The current square footage for the lot that was there before we got the new, essentially half a new lot, that ratio is more than what we're asking for with the new land that we have now. So from a technical standpoint, I just don't understand we're actually lowering the size of the house relative to the lot.
So the existing conditions, I don't know if you can hear me, are like actually about 46% FAR, and we're asking for 39. So whether that
Except that's not quite how the ordinances work, you know,
Right.
you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, we view, basically we view the project on its own merits. It's not not based on necessarily pre-existing, you know.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah, okay.
So just a question, because I don't know how this works. If we go for the denial, you deny us, we appeal it. How long does that take?
You have 10 days to appeal it.
Okay, and then if we lose the appeal, then we're back to this where we're at right now.
No, you would go before the city council.
Before the city council. So it's the city council that would grant, would be essentially the equivalent of a court of appeals. And then it would be up to them. And, you know, and if you're essentially presenting the project as you've presented it to us tonight, well, then, you know, the city council can probably act fairly quickly.
Okay, and then so if they overturn your decision, then
you're good to go.
Then we're good to go. And if they don't, if they deny it, then do we come back here again?
Then you're done.
It becomes a new application,
You would have to refile a brand new application.
but we could come back. I mean, philosophically, we could come back in front of this commission with the revisions that we're being asked to do. And I'm not saying because it isn't a continuance, you will look at it as a new project again. I fully understand that, but hopefully some memories will serve if we do that. So I'm gonna have to defer to David and Sheila on which procedurally how they want to go forward.
If timing is the key here, the time to get to an appeal is probably going to be similar to what you're going to take to go revise the project and come back to the commission.
Probably about 6 weeks. When would realistically, you know, obviously you have to wait till you get a package back in front of you and you've got to deem it complete, which I think we probably would have a pretty good shot at because we've checked a lot of boxes here. And then how quick could we actually get in front of this body again? And I'm not going to hold a gun to your head, but wild guess, 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Well, we have multiple applications all stacking up for hearings, and unfortunately, we don't have a hearing the first meeting of July for a variety of factors. So I don't know when you're going to get me revised plans, and I do have to have the driveway evaluated and confirmed. So I would think you would not be going back to hearing until early August at the soonest.
That sounds about right. And then appeal to council, about how quick, if nothing in the package changes at all?
I don't know what their schedule is like, but they have to hear it within 2 meetings of the appeal date. So at least a month away, because likely the agenda is full already for the next meeting. And
we have 10 days.
Happening all the time.
We have 10 days to appeal it, but we could literally appeal it tomorrow if we chose, correct?
No, first we have to finish denying it. So there were no findings or anything for this application. So it's not technically denied until we adopt the findings for denial.
And that would happen in the next meeting, correct?
Okay.
Well, we're having a little timing staff support issues here. At least you may want to weigh in on this. Because I am leaving town.
We're both heading off on vacation at the same time, which is right before a meeting that's canceled, and there's a city council meeting that's canceled too. And then we have new staff starting in July. So realistically, the city council meeting and the plan would probably be about the same time as that it might be considered by the planning commission. So one other option I was thinking, if there's time, is if you wanted to take time to think about this decision, we could have it on the 28th for you to make that decision for either a denial. We need findings.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get findings ready for that meeting.
Kristen, is there any way to craft a motion where it just seems like you both have a pretty good idea of what we're trying to achieve? I'm trying to help these guys out so it doesn't end up in September.
Brock, I don't think I would be comfortable trying to infer to the applicant exactly what I think he needs to do
Okay.
to reduce the mass and bulk and make you happy. What if he doesn't believe that what I'm saying is what you meant? So then we end
I'm
up.
already happy, but
Would you allow us, I know this is unusual, but we have done it before. Would you allow us to work with a member of the commission? Maybe a more concerned member of the commission? Or is that, I guess that doesn't work because you've got to vote on it.
Yes. So ultimately, the commission has the decision to make tonight. It's not really the applicant's choice. You can continue this application or you can deny it and then give me directions to create findings. But they can't appeal until the findings are adopted.
Yeah, and she could
I would move continuing this item.
Yeah, I would advise continuing. I think that would probably work best. I mean, obviously it's up to the applicant, but I think it would work best for them, particularly again. I'm sounding like a broken record, but we are trying to get to yes, so that you're not facing a hostile commission.
I would echo that, and because I like I said, I'm in favor of the project, even though I do understand my fellow commissioners' concern about massing. But I think that the rolling the dice and going to the city, to the council, is very risky, and it could put you further behind than working and getting a continuance and trying to work through that mechanism.
I removed their permission to speak, just so you know, because we're.
I'm just saying so that they can hear me. That I would think that if it were me, I would try to work with the planning commission as opposed to trying to roll the dice and go with.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think you should think that that you have a lot of people supporting your project on the planning commission. So we're probably a more friendly body to work with.
Yeah, you actually only have to move one vote. Okay.
I already suggested making a motion, or I'll make the motion to continue this to June 28th.
No, wait.
Not to June 20th.
Well,
They won't be able to amend the plans that soon.
Oh, wait, okay, to a date uncertain.
Okay, so Laura's moved to continue this application to date uncertain. Could we get a second?
I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We should have a roll call.
And any opposed? And then we'll take a roll call. Okay, we can take a roll call.
Commissioner Tauber,
Aye.
Commissioner Wagstaff,
Aye.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Aye.
Commissioner Swisher,
Aye.
Chair Kunstler.
Aye. Okay, thank you much, and thank you to everyone in attendance this evening for your efforts and for being here and for speaking up.
I just want to clarify, June 28th has already got multiple items on the agenda. We couldn't fit this one immediately on that agenda as well. Okay, that was why I jumped in.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. With that, what do I do with my agenda here? Okay. Business items. We need a motion to approve the minutes of our meeting from May 24th.
I can make an emotion to approve the minutes for May 24th.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Laura, are you in favor of?
I said aye.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So that that's adopted. And any planning commissioners reports? No, I will make one really brief comment during the prior presentation. I did allude to the fact that insurance companies are rattling their sabers, and they are. I'm starting to suspect that there's sort of a campaign on the part of certain underwriters to try to deny insurance as the risk of wildfire increases. So I think you just want to be aware of that. And I've got, if anyone wants to ask me more about that offline, I'm happy to take that question. Great. So our final motion is to adjourn. Don't all talk at once.
I'll move that we adjourn.
I can second.
Okay, great. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm hearing no opposed, so we are adjourned for this evening. Thank you all very, very much. I know that was a hard one.
Oh, yes.